right, thank you very much, David Ken. And again, it is our top story, of course, Yellow Trucking, as mentioned, mentioning to the Teamsters that they will file for bankruptcy. They ceased all operations yesterday. Bill Priestley here, along with Thomas Wasson and Tony Mulvey, and looking at the repercussions of what could happen here. Obviously, as you all mentioned, maybe expected a week before, but now that it's kind of almost officially happened, we're still waiting for the official release from Yellow. Reaction to what a 99-year company has unfortunately undergone now. Thomas?
Well, definitely it's not good for the 30,000 or so workers. 22,000 of them are Teamsters. And so kind of like waiting for the election of a new pope, waiting to see the smoke, to see that, he has indeed passed. Same with Yellow at the moment, this in terms of financial reports. But I think that we're going to see a situation where in the near term, there is enough capacity to soak up this. Now, if you're a customer used to having things really cheap, you're going to have a problem. So there's going to be some volatility on spot markets as these customers that were, Yellow was pricing themselves very cheap. There's part of the reason they're out of business is they weren't very good at the business part. Finally, though, for end of the holidays, we normally see an uptick. We see a surge in volume. That's going to be the big question. With Yellow out of the market, being a really cheap provider, will this be a situation where the other LTL players are going to have Christmas come early, metaphorically speaking?
Tony?
Yeah, it's obviously expected, but as Thomas alluded to, right, that on the pricing side, they price themselves out or into freight more times than not, right? They were giving, and it came at a cost, right? A cost of service, right? They're on one of the metrics that measures LTL service, they were the lowest of the national carriers. So not really a surprise to see it. I think one of the interesting parts, and you kind of alluded to it, it's from a shipper's perspective, you were expecting things to be at Yellow prices. Good luck finding it in the market right now. The other LTL providers, especially those publicly traded, your Old Dominions, your Sayas, and the like, they're very disciplined when it comes to pricing. You look at their Q2 numbers, right? You're talking Old Dominion 72 OR. Revenue per shipment was up 7% year over year. It shows that they're pretty disciplined when it comes to pricing. They're not going to drop their prices just to absorb freight. They don't need it. They're already extremely profitable as is. It's not a volume game for these providers. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. I think the other impact is to the truckload market, because what Yellow liked to do and what Sean O'Brien really pushed for was Yellow and the Teamsters operating the line haul network within Yellow's network, whereas these other providers take advantage of outsourcing some of those line haul moves because it's cheaper. So seeing how that's going to kind of play out, part of me thinks that's why you're seeing an uptick in OTVI, right? Pushing their existing contracts with other providers already in place, so pushing some of this freight into the market. But is that the whole situation? Probably not, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, again, we haven't heard anything official in terms of a release from Yellow about exactly what's going on. Again, we've only heard that the Teamsters have said that they will go and file for bankruptcy, which has had some interesting effects in the stock market, Tony, as you mentioned before we went on the air.
Yeah, it's the financial markets are just one of these interesting beasts.
And we expected this announcement to come before the markets opened.
Yeah, and bad news is good news, right. Good news is bad news. It just doesn't make sense, right? All the news is ceasing operations, filing bankruptcy. Teamsters have been notified. Stock, granted, it's under $1, and it has been, and it's effectively filing bankruptcy. It's going to zero. Stock is up 18% pre-market. It's just bad news is good news, and that's just the way. That's just the way it works. It's one of those things. Not financial advice, wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole because it ultimately is going to zero. If they file bankruptcy, that's where it's going.
Right.
Because it's not a restructuring or anything like that. It is a liquidation.
Yeah.
That is, whenever that comes out, that's going to be the case, right? Yellow itself is worth more selling off than it is operating. I think that's what's interesting. Right now, market cap at $36 million, or $36 million. You're talking assets in real estate up over $1 billion. You're talking equipment, so trucks, tractors and trailers, upwards of $1 billion. That real estate number that's on their books is probably lowballed, right? It's probably closer to $3-4 billion
and
than $1 billion.
Yeah.
So you're selling that. They're going to be able to cover the debt with that. But why? It's worth more breaking apart than it is operating.
Worth more dead than alive.
Yeah.
As we go to the It's a Wonderful Life reference there as well. So let's talk about the end result here, especially the drivers. Now you got drivers out of Yellow that are going to be obviously without a job, without a chance. Any chance they're going to be absorbed somewhere else, and how does that work?
Well, it's weird with LTL because it can be terminal based. So the situation is the drivers, over the road drivers can kind of go anywhere, but with LTL, you're generally around a node, a hub or somewhere. So if the hub in the area, like the Midwest or the Pacific out on the West Coast, some of those areas were dominated by Yellow. So there may not be jobs available in other hubs. But here comes the fun part. Knight Swift, their CEO, was talking about how when Central Freight Lines went out, they were able to buy some real estate. Trucking companies that also have an LTL presence are going to use this as an opportunity. J.B. Hunt was very kind of mum on the subject, but they did not rule out that there is an opportunity that in spite of Yellow going bankrupt, other providers, and some of them are truckload carriers that are, little multimodal action, can stand to gain from this. Like Tony said, on that sale of property, they're going to step in. So when we're talking about the jobs, maybe in a few months, if the terminal gets bought, another provider, there may be an opportunity for them to get a job. But I wouldn't bet my, livelihood on that. I'd start looking for something.
Tony, as we look at Yellow again, you talked about liquidation in terms of how this is going to happen, or how we expect this to happen anyway. We heard back when, again, Central Freight Lines, when they folded, Estes Trucking came in and swooped up a lot of those drivers to try and keep them obviously employed. So now looking at the assets at this particular point, who could possibly jump in, and who wants to jump into this?
I mean, it depends, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with Yellow, right, it's a lot of day cabs and things like that. So it's going to be the more regional plays, right, that you're the hub and spoke that LTL is. And I think that's sort of...
Could this be piecemeal?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to... I don't think... One of the reasons you didn't see Yellow get purchased in this, because obviously when they're in distress like this, it's a prime target for an acquisition. People don't want to deal with the union contract, and they don't want to deal with the debt. And that is why you're going to see it go bankrupt, and people will be buying this for pennies on the dollar. The assets, I say that, but I mean, it's still not cheap, right? We talk about the value of it. But I mean, regional players are going to play in this, right? It's not just these national... Old Dominion's not going to come and buy every asset, or Saia's not going to come buy every asset, right? It's going to be piecemeal together. It's just a matter of who does it and where you need a presence. And does adding another terminal to your network, does it make sense for the volume that you're handling? Because you don't want to go out and just build a new terminal and then not have the volume needed to use it.
Well, granted, it was something that was expected. Granted, it came a week later, but at the same time, after 99 years, Yellow looks like they're going to be officially announcing a bankruptcy sometime soon. Still waiting on that, as Todd Maiden is following that story as we speak. We'll take a short break, come back with more after this.